Okay, let's begin our basic maintenance on our Skilsaw. One of the first things we need to do is to remove the blade if it's dull. On the back of the saw is a black plunger. Push that in with your finger and hold it in place. As you're pressing that plunger in, take a wrench, one designed for the Skilsaw, and loosen the nut. Now this is a reverse thread, meaning you're going to loosen the nut by turning the wrench to the right. Once you have it loosened, take off the nut, pull back the guard, and remove the blade and the washer. Now, one of the most important safety features on our Skilsaw is a retractable guard. As you let go of it with your thumb, it should immediately snap close. If it doesn't, there's a few things you're going to want to check and make sure they're repaired. Number one, is the spring inside? Is it broken or become disconnected? Is there buildup? Is there a piece of wood stuck in there? Whatever it is, we want to make sure that guard does move freely and easily. Now remove the blade arbor, and we're ready to move on to our next step. It's important that our cord is in perfect condition. So even with just changing the blade, I always check the cord just to make sure nothing's been cut, there's no nicks, and then I also look very closely at the end of the cord. This is a grounded tool, so this third prong must be there. If it is broken off, the best advice is replace the whole cord. The cord itself is sealed, somewhat waterproof, so instead of replacing with the plug, replace the whole cord. Now, checking over our cord, I found a small nick. Now this nick, there's no exposed wires, so a fix is simply taking electrical tape, wrapping it around till it completely seals off the cord, and now this cord is safe to use. The Skilsaw has a variety of adjustments we can make. We can change the blade height. Since we can change our blade height, we need to take care and maintain of that function. In the front of the saw is a pivot point where we can tilt the saw upwards to almost 50 degrees. So that needs to be maintained. Inside our saw, depends how much we've been using it, is probably a collection of sawdust and oil. Get it completely clean using some type of brush and get all the particles out as best you can. If you're fortunate to have an air hose, use that to get the remaining dust out of there. Also clean out at the rear of the motor where the air fins are, thoroughly getting the dust removed. Now to lubricate, we use a silicone spray like I have here. One feature on the saw is where it pivots, right in the front of the saw. And there's a bolt right here in front of my pencil you're going to be able to see in a moment. And you can see how the saw pivots. That bolt over time can work itself out and become disconnected, which would make the saw fall apart at the front and be very dangerous to use. An easy fix. So we've checked and seen that it's out too far. We take a screwdriver and drive it in till it's tight. Now we can see our saw has another area to lubricate right there at the tail end. A little bit of spray oil there. Also down in front here, again where the saw pivots for raising, a little bit of silicone spray inside there as well. On the front, where we change our angle to 45 degrees, it's suggested to spray a little bit of silicone spray in this area there. Check the switch. The switch should again retract quickly and automatically. If not, replace the whole switch. The saw motor uses brushes, and they're located under this black cover. To check the brushes, simply unscrew the cap. At this point, be careful. The brushes are spring-loaded, so take off the cap slowly. Now once you take out the brushes, check out the length. If they're worn down to about 1/4 inch, you should replace them. If not, put them back in the same way they came out. Set them inside, and you may have to fiddle with it a little bit because again the spring's kind of hard to work with. Set it down in place. Slide the cap in on top, and then tighten back down with your screwdriver. Don't over tighten, that's a plastic nut and can break. As mentioned in the previous video, this is a worm drive saw and it does need lubrication just like your car does. To lubricate first, clean off around the area. Remove all the dust, grease, and oil. If there's excess dust, grease, and oil stuck on there, you might have a problem we'll talk about in a minute. So again, check around, make sure nothing's leaking there, everything should be tight, and now we're ready to open up and check the oil. Check the oil, use the same Skilsaw wrench provided. This is a regular thread, so turn counterclockwise, and then spin the nut out. Around the nut is a little O-ring, and that O-ring over time does get crushed. If you have excess leakage, replace the O-ring. Take your finger as a dipstick and check to see if there's oil. If there's oil at the tip of your finger, the transmission is fine. If the oil is clear like this, no problem. Dark oil, you should replace. To replace it, I'm just holding my thumb over there. Hold the can underneath the saw, tip out and pour out all the oil. Tighten back up the nut. And once you have it tightened, clean off any excess oil again. Let's now look at our blades. Blade technology in the past 10 years is tremendous. These special type of blades here are designed for cutting wet lumber, and we do cut wet lumber. You'll notice in the saw that there's all kinds of different funny little cuts and angles and little relief marks. Those are designed so when the blade gets hot it can expand and not warp. Also notice in this case, this blade tells us our blade direction. Important when we replace the saw blade. These blades are also unique. That can be a round hole or a diamond arbor. For our Skilsaw, we'll be using the arbor with the diamond shape. Notice in here, again, there is a circle, round arbor, and there's a diamond arbor. We need to remove this to get the diamond. To get the diamond shape, set up a couple blocks of wood, roughly the width of the arbor that you're going to be punching out. Take a screwdriver and on one of the points on the bottom you're going to hit it and it's going to twist the punch out. Once you've tapped on it once or twice, the punch out now should easily drop out. Now we're ready to replace the blade. Here's our parts to put back together. We have the blade, we have the bolt, we have the washer, and the arbor adapter. What's important about this arbor adapter is it has the diamond shape on it. You need to be sure when you insert the blade and tighten it down that it fits right in that diamond arbor shape. As we look at it here, so you can see it closer. Again, should be a perfect fit. If not, the blade will wobble and A, be dangerous, or B, will damage your saw blade. It's very important when we replace the blade that we put it in the right direction. On the guard you're going to see an arrow. And that shows the teeth are going to move from the bottom upwards in this particular direction. So now when I set the blade on there, let's take a look at that blade arrow. Looks like that blade arrow is going the opposite direction of the blade arrow on our guard. So we need to flip the blade around. And as we flip the blade around, we're going to see the points of each tooth, is going in that upper direction. That's the proper direction to install our blade. So now we're going to put back in the blade arbor. It just slips right in. Now we're going to lower the saw table down, makes it easier to install the blade. Pull back the guard. And now we're going to take the blade, and again, make sure you have the proper blade direction. It's easy to do it backwards. We've all done it once in our career. Oops, yep, looks like this instructor needs to check his arrows. So we're going to flip this blade around and put it on correctly. As I mentioned earlier, we want to make sure it sits perfectly on that blade arbor adapter. Just like that. If not, and the blade wobbles around, well, fix that before you tighten the blade down itself. Okay, it's now properly seated. So we're going to put the washer on. Once the washer's on, we're going to put the nut. And again, now this is a reverse thread. So in spinning to the right, no, our nut's going to spin to the left as we insert it. Now the reverse action is, we're going to push back in on the plunger on the back like you did before. Put the wrench on, and this time turning counterclockwise, we go till it's snug. Once it's snug, we give it about a good quarter turn. Just like that. Any tighter, and it's not needed. It's going to damage the blade.